Sup nerds, my name is Steve from Flipping the Nerd, and this is my top 10 favorite WWE wrestlers of all time. The date I released this is WrestleMania, so I figured what better way to celebrate WrestleMania, professional wrestling's biggest event, than by releasing a top 10 wrestling list. Now let me be clear for this list, these are my top 10 favorite wrestlers, not the top 10 best wrestlers. There is a difference, and you'll see that in a few people in the list that I think are maybe some of the best wrestlers of all time, but not necessarily my favorites. So we have to keep that clear. So before I get to it, I will have 5 honorable mentions, as I always do. The first one is Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero, when he first came into the WWE, was not someone that I was particularly I was happy to see him get into the WWE because I had seen his work in WCW, but I wasn't particularly excited by his work. But then he came back from injury. I think he had broken his arm or something, and he came back as Latino Heat, and he teamed up with China. And then when he started his cheat, lie, and steal thing, it was amazing. I mean, this guy just reinvented himself, and seeing how how unique his matches would be, because he would do anything possible to win. Like, for example, he'd hit someone with a chair while the ref wasn't looking, then put the chair on the ground and fall himself so that the ref thinks, like, what the hell happened, and then would, like, slowly roll up on the guy and win. The guy was amazing. Great personality as well. Unfortunately taken from us far too soon. He passed away at a young age, and that really sucks. But in the time that he did get to perform in the WWE, he was incredible, and that's why I want to give him an honorable mention. Then we have probably a controversial one for my list, John Cena. I really like John Cena, and I always have. I don't get the hate. Yes, he won a lot. He also wasn't the most exciting wrestler ever, but every time that music hits and he comes out, I'm happy. Like, I think he's a perfectly fine, good wrestler, and I really do enjoy watching him. His entrance is always great. His matches are still pretty decent. I mean, they're not the best, but I do enjoy watching John Cena, and I think he's awesome. So I want to give him at least an honorable mention. Then we have Trish Stratus. The women's division, now I don't watch pro wrestling all that much anymore. I do occasionally. The women's division is probably the only thing I actually want to watch right now, because they are doing amazing things. It's finally cool to see all these women do these awesome things in the ring and really get the chance to shine. In fact, WrestleMania today is being, for the first time, main evented by women, which is amazing. And back when I used to watch wrestling a lot, the women weren't giving much to do. But Trish Stratus, and Lita for that matter, really kind of broke that mold, and that's why I really enjoy Trish Stratus. I mean, she's Canadian, she's awesome. I met her last year, and I enjoyed watching her. So definitely have to give mad props to the women and to Trish Stratus in particular, because for breaking that mold. Her in China, and China was an incredible person too, but I found China's matches not as fun to watch, so that's why she wasn't on honorable mention, but Trish Stratus had to be. Then we have Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid. Now, this is what I was talking about before. Shawn Michaels is at or near the top of the list of the best wrestlers of all time, in my opinion. Maybe not at the top, but definitely in the top 5. But I do give him an honorable mention. For a long time, I didn't like Shawn Michaels. I mean, you have to give me, leeway here. I was at the Montreal Screwjob as a huge Bret Hart fan. So I really hated Shawn Michaels for a long time. Later in his career, when he came back and wasn't as crazy, I started to enjoy him more. And then when he had matches with The Undertaker and Chris Jericho and stuff like that, I really started to understand why this guy was so popular. And I do really like him now. A lot of his matches are some of my favorite of all time. So not quite top 10, but definitely needed an honorable mention. The next one is also someone who I think is one of the top 5 best wrestlers of all time, and that's the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. because I was more of a WWE guy, I never really got to see Ric Flair perform at his peak. A lot of it was in WCW and NWA. So that's why he's so low. Well, he's not on my list, actually. He's just an honorable mention. But I always appreciate seeing Ric Flair. I know what he brought to professional wrestling. And I definitely had to give him props. Because I was more of a WWE guy, he's not in my top 10, but he definitely needed an honorable mention. So let's get into it. My top 10 favorite WWE wrestlers of all time. Number 10, Edge. Edge is a wrestler that really had awesome progression throughout his career, starting with like this kind of dark, almost like he'd stay in the rafters and very mysterious. He didn't talk, which unfortunate because he's such a great talker. Edge is just a really cool guy, and then he went to the Brood, and then he went into Edge and Christian, which is one of my favorite tag teams of all time, just absolutely hilarious. And then he went to Rated R Superstar, and then once in a while he was a good guy. Edge was awesome. He was a great talker. He was funny. He had great matches. Just an overall amazing pro wrestler. And I'm happy that he's still active out there. And unfortunately he had to retire because of a neck injury. But he's still acting, and he does an amazing podcast with Christian. So Edge, one of my favorites, had to be there, number 10. Number 9, Mick Foley. I love Mick Foley. I mean, this is the opposite of what you expect a pro wrestler to look like. And he gave us such amazing moments. When he won the WWE title the first time was fantastic. I mean, he put his body on the line when you think of Hell in the Cell and some of the other crazy matches he's had. The match with Shawn Michaels at In Your House is one that really stands out as an amazing one. When he was scary, I loved him because I love scary, type of wrestlers. And when he was more funny later, I adored him as well. And as commissioner, commissioner is such a big word on his t-shirt, it would run down. I put a picture of it, I think, in my little reel there. Mick Foley, amazing. I read all his books. The guy is really insightful and funny, and definitely someone I love to watch every match that he was in. So definitely had to be on the list. Number 8, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. I loved the Macho Man. His matches are incredible. Of course, I don't need to say it, but I'll say it anyway. His match with Ricky Steamboat at WrestleMania 3 is among the all-time best. Probably my second favorite match of all time, if any match, just to show you how much I liked Randy Savage. Now, the reason he's lower on my list is you'll see I was more a fan of someone else in the 80s, and that, like it or not, it was almost like a WCW versus WWE thing, or, Elvis versus the Beatles. You liked one or the other. You can like both, but there's one that you preferred over the other, and I preferred the other one. But I always loved the Macho Man. He's an incredible fighter. I love to hear him talk. His Slim Jim commercials are hilarious. Amazing matches, great personality. It really sucks that he left on WWE in bad terms, and then he passed away before, coming back and doing all this stuff. But I'll always remember Macho Man fondly, and definitely one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Number 7, the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, The Rock. I absolutely loved The Rock. Not so much in his debut when he was Rocky Maivia, but when he started getting, his personality in, I think he's one of, if not the best talker in the history of pro wrestling. If he's not the top, he's definitely right up there. He's on the Mount Rushmore of the best talkers. Very great. He had fun matches. It's really his talking that puts him on this list. His insults, it doesn't matter what you said, and his dozens of lines, him singing. It's just, there's so many great memories. I mean, my favorite The Rock memory is him sparring with Chris Jericho when Chris Jericho debuted. One of the best entrances of all time, and they had such an amazing verbal match, because I think both of them on a Mount Rushmore of best talkers ever. So The Rock has to be a favorite. Now, this is based only on his wrestling career. I love him as an actor. He's probably my favorite actor of all time right now. I know it's not the greatest movies, but I just enjoy seeing him on screen. So yeah, The Rock definitely had to be on the list. Number 6, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Texas Rattlesnake. My favorite era of wrestling was the Attitude Era, and he was front and center in the Attitude Era. He had what I think is the best rivalry of all time, which is ironically against Vince McMahon, not against another pro wrestler. I could not wait every single Monday night to see what Stone Cold Steve Austin would do next. And that made that era of wrestling my absolute favorite. And he had great matches as well, but not overly amazing because he was usually so dominant. But still loved seeing him, whether it was the beer truck or him coming down in like that 4x4. There's just so many great Stone Cold moments, and a lot of them that I like to watch occasionally on YouTube just because he was such a great entertainer. And that's why I put Stone Cold Steve Austin on the list. Number 5, Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho just keeps getting better. It's crazy. From his debut, when I mentioned it with The Rock, which was fantastic, probably the best debut ever in the WWE, and then just getting better and better, and he keeps reinventing himself, Recently he had The List, and I know now in Japan he's doing this whole other thing, and he's just such a great talker. He's also an incredible wrestler, and he's just so entertaining. I love watching Chris Jericho go out there and do his thing. Easily one of the best talkers in the game. Also one of the best wrestlers in the game. And at the age, he's probably 45 now. He's still got it. And that's incredible. I absolutely adore Chris Jericho. So top 5 for sure, Chris Jericho. Number 4, Triple H. Wearing one of his shirts right now. Triple H is somebody that I wasn't a fan of when he was first Hunter Hearst Helmsley, but then I met him in person, and he was the nicest guy ever. I mean, if you watch one of my old lists, top 10 nicest celebrities I've ever met, he was right up there because he is such a nice dude. And from there, I started watching him a little more closely, and that's about the time when he was about to join DX, which was such a fun gimmick. And then he became the Game, and then it just went on, and I love watching Triple H. I remember when he got injured his quad, and then he came back, he was jacked even more than he was before, and it was just like, oh man, just an incredible guy. And now he's practically running the WWE, and I think he's doing a great job of it, to be honest with you. Everything from NXT to the women's division getting a spotlight. I think a lot of that has to do with Triple H. You can tell he loves the game, not himself, but the actual wrestling game. And he had incredible matches. He was great on the mic. The only thing is I wish he didn't wrestle so much these days, taking spots from younger guys. But other than that, that's a nitpick. I think Triple H is one of the best of all time. Number 3, Hulk Hogan. Now, I know. I get it. Things you've said, not the coolest at all. And I don't agree with what he said at all. But I would be lying to myself if I didn't say that Hulk Hogan is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. When I started watching wrestling in the 80s, it's Hulk Hogan that made me watch every week in the 80s and early 90s. I absolutely, his energy, his presence, his corny lines, I dug all of it. And then when he reinvented himself as Hollywood Hulk Hogan, which was on WCW side, but if there's any reason I was watching WCW, it was to watch the NWO. So I just really loved Hulk Hogan. He was super nice to me in person. When he came back to the WWE after WrestleMania 18 with that incredible match with The Rock, we had a giant standing ovation when I saw him in Montreal, and he deserved every bit of it. I just love watching Hulk Hogan. His presence and his demeanor and everything, it's just fantastic. Now, it really sucks what he said and what he's done, but I can't take away the fact that I loved him as a pro wrestler. As a human, questionable sometimes, but as a pro wrestler, absolutely had to be number 3 on my list. Number 2, Bret the Hitman Hart. The excellence of execution, the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. I was a huge fan of Bret Hart. Of course, he represented Canada during that whole Canada-US thing in the 90s. He was an amazing pro wrestler. Just the moves he would do were incredible. His matches were fantastic. His matches against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12, his match at Stone Cold at WrestleMania 13, his match against Perfect at SummerSlam, I think, was it 86 or 88? I don't remember exactly, but Bret the Hitman Hart is just a fantastic pro wrestler. Good on the mic, not great, but his wrestling was right there at the top. And yeah, I loved Bret Hart. And I'm so happy that he came back to WWE and kind of mended those fences and we get to see him again. In fact, unfortunately, he was at the Hall of Fame yesterday getting inducted for his tag team, the Hart Foundation, but then he got attacked, which really sucks. But, you know, whatever, he's okay. Cancer survivor, survived a stroke. The guy is a legend. So, yeah, absolutely, Bret Hart had to be on this list. Number 1. The Undertaker, my favorite pro wrestler of all time, bar none. I'm a huge horror fan, I don't hide it, and of course I would gravitate to the guy who was like the horror guy in the WWE. From his debut at Survivor Series 1990, I'm like, that's my favorite guy from now on because he looked so scary and so cool. His matches are so unique and incredible. Hell in a Cell, casket matches, buried alive matches, Inferno matches. Just Undertaker is such a fun pro wrestler to watch. It's just, there's so many amazing moments, and my favorite match of all time is an Undertaker match. It was Undertaker Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. He was the first celebrity I ever met. Scared the crap out of me. And the guy is huge, and I was I met him in 96, so I was 14. You know, it's just, yeah, The Undertaker is everything I love about pro wrestling. It's gimmicky, but not overly. It was like, he would make you feel something, like an emotion that's just, oh, the Undertaker is like, I love the superhero aspect of him and the outworldly, everything. I love everything about the Undertaker. That's all there is to it. Of course, he would be my number 1 of all time. And that's my list. So let me know, who are your favorite pro wrestlers of all time? Is there any that I missed or anything? What do you think of my list? What are yours? I'd love to know. I love to discuss this kind of stuff, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, or right here in the YouTube comments. Next week, we're going to talk about the top 10 favorite Harry Potter characters, just the movies, because I haven't read the books. So look forward to that. Don't forget to watch all the other videos on my channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you all on the flip side.